Welcome to another awesome episode of Cases Gone Wild, where I, Jon Marko of Marko Law, bring you some of the craziest, wildest, most insane legal cases that you have ever seen. Today we have a very special episode. Today is a best of episode. We are going to bring you the wildest cases from season 1, all packed into a single jaw-dropping episode today. This is the first time we've ever done this, so buckle up and hold on as we bring you Best of Cases Gone Wild Season 1. Please listen on all of your Spotify, all of your audio streams that you can find. We're everywhere now. Also, you can watch us live on YouTube, on video. We have video recordings of this. If you like us, please share. Tell us how we're doing. Give us a like. Give us feedback. Thanks again, and enjoy the show. You got to tell us about this case on Cases Gone Wild, because I don't want to say it is the craziest case, but it might be the craziest case.
Yeah, John, it is a pretty crazy case. So my firm handled this birth trauma case that will probably shock you and shock the audience.
So when we talk about birth trauma and medical malpractice, so you're representing injured people who were injured by healthcare professionals, like doctors, nursing homes, things like that, right?
Yeah, and specifically we're talking about the baby, right? The unborn baby. So in this case, there was a black couple, which will be relevant later, you know why I'm telling you.
Sure.
Who were excited to have, a child. And they go into the hospital, and, John, as you know, with your kids and, the audience listening who had a child, it can be pretty stressful being at the hospital during the time, but very exciting, right? And it can be very long. Their labor can go on for a day, 24 hours.
It's different all the time, right?
Yeah, sure is.
Is this Detroit area hospital?
It's in Michigan.
Okay.
It's in Michigan. And the couple's excited. And during, the labor and delivery, one thing they're doing is they're tracking the, fetal heart tracings. They're tracking,
that's
the
like
heartbeats.
the little thing, right? Like on the monitor, you can see that make sure the heart's beating of the baby, so there's not any problems.
Exactly. So there's one monitoring the mom's heart rate, and then there's another monitor monitoring the baby's heart rate.
Sure.
And they're making sure the baby's doing well, right? And there can be accelerations, decelerations that they're looking for that cues them in to whether the baby's doing good, the baby needs to come out, or the baby needs to come out immediately.
It's like a status monitor, right?
Yeah,
for the baby.
certainly.
Yeah.
And it starts out on the abdomen of the mom, and then as the pregnancy or the labor progresses, there's actually little nodes or nodules, almost like a thumbtack, that they put into the mother, and it actually goes onto the head of the baby. It's actually pretty remarkable, and that gives a better reading compared to the monitoring that's done on the abdomen.
Sure.
All right. So in this case, they were monitoring the tracings, and there were some pretty concerning tracings that came up.
So what does that mean concerning, like there's a problem with the heartbeat, or there's baby's in distress or something?
The baby's in distress. There can be a lot of reasons for it.
Sure.
Okay. And it's pretty complex, but at some point, the doctors made a decision, this baby needs to come out, right? Emergency C-section. And during that time, father, dad, get out of the room. Let's bring the team in, and we're going to get this baby out.
Scary thing for any parent.
Very scary. Having a C-section be scheduled is typically pretty scary. But when it needs to be an emergency C-section, of course, there's added fear because there's a lot of uncertainty involved, right?
Sure.
So
they make the dad leave the room, and they start operating on the mom?
Exactly. And they get the child out, okay, but unfortunately the child's not doing good. The child's not breathing, and after around a half hour of resuscitation, they pronounce this child dead.
That's like every parent's worst nightmare. But what happens next really
Yes. This will really shock you next. Now, it's shocking enough, of course, being told that your child has died, right? I mean, I couldn't imagine the emotion that flooded through the mom and the dad, right? But around 2 hours later, and this baby's brought down to the hospital morgue, the dad wanted to see the child.
Like, wanted to say, like, goodbye and, like, you know, like, last respects, right?
Absolutely, right? So he asked, and I don't recall if it was a nurse or doctor or another staff member, but somebody brought him down to the morgue.
And so the dad hasn't even seen his dead child yet at this point?
Correct.
So he wants to go. This is the first time. And they have, like, a morgue in the basement of hospitals?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, every hospital has a morgue.
Not a good journey down there, I'm sure. I mean, geez, oh, peace.
No, I mean, it's just so emotional. Definitely from both from the father and mother's probably equally devastating. Yeah. But the father learning from it after the fact and then wanting to go down there and pay his last respects. So they get down there, they get in the morgue, and as you know, it's cold. A morgue is cold. That's the point of a morgue, right? To keep the bodies fresh, or at least not smelling, and kind of stopping the body from decaying,
decomposing,
right? So they come up to this very tiny body bag. And recall, John, what I told you earlier, this was a black couple, right? The nurse or doctor, whoever was, with the father, open up the bag, and there's a white kid in there, a white dead baby. Not his kid.
You got to be kidding me.
Not his kid. So, and John, seeing any kid, especially a baby, is very disturbing.
Yeah.
Whether it's your kid, whether you know the person, whether it's just a picture you find on the internet.
It's horrible.
You don't want to see a dead baby, right? So that's not his kid. The nurse hurries up, holy crap, shuts the bag, and they go to the next body bag. Okay, they open up the body bag, and it is his kid, okay? But the chest is moving.
You gotta be kidding me.
The chest is moving. The child is breathing.
And alive?
Alive and breathing.
So they took this family's child who was alive, put it in a body bag, and put it down in the morgue. Dude, if this dad hadn't gone down there to say his last goodbye to this kid would have been what? Just
the kid would have probably suffocated and and died. He's in a morgue, right? It's cold.
That's
right
insane.
In a body bag. He was pronounced dead around 2.5 hours prior.
I would never want to go to these doctors. How they can't even. Not only did they not deliver the baby, they put a live baby in the morgue.
Right.
I mean,
shocking.
It's insane.
The child. So of course, as you could imagine, the nurse like, whoa, emergency. Let's go. Let's get this baby out of there. Let's start working on the baby. And amazingly, the baby survived, John. Now, the baby has significant injuries, and significant brain injuries from the trauma that happened during birth and maybe and likely from sitting in a morgue for a couple of hours.
No kidding. Wow, that is insane. So, Steve, tell me about one of, like, the craziest cases, because you've been involved in thousands of cases?
No.
Hundreds of cases?
Hundreds of cases, yeah.
Tell me, just off the cuff now for our listeners, one of the craziest cases.
Anyone who's ever done a trial knows that every trial is a trial gone wild, because no trial ever
goes
according
the way
to
you
plan. Right.
And anything can happen.
Yep. But I'll have to say, I was involved with a trial with Jeff Feiger, and it involved a guy named Jerry, a kid named Jerry. It's, just one of those waifs, one of those kids in life that got, foster care, when he was young, got into juvie when he was like 15.
And this is the client? This is the plaintiff?
This is the client, yeah, the plaintiff. And he finally gets out of juvie, because he aged out, basically, more than anything else. And he got a job in a steel plant. And he was like shoveling scrap of steel, so that it wouldn't pile up on the floor. And they constructed this huge 16-foot steel wall that was 3 inches thick, but they only supported it on one side, right?
So the steel plant constructed this wall?
Right.
Without him. Like, he didn't build the wall.
No, he didn't build the wall. He didn't have anything to do with it. They just said, okay, just push the scraps up against this wall and we'll just, brush it right out. So, of course, he's pushing the scrap up against the wall, and, they've got these huge these rollers, where the slabs of steel roll across it, right? And they're about 16 inches apart. Well, this steel wall collapses. It falls over because it was only supported on one side.
How big was this wall?
16 foot high and 3 inches thick.
Steel wall?
Yeah.
And don't tell me it fell on the kid.
It fell on him, and it crushed him in between two of the rollers. So his body was crushed in 16 inches, of these rollers. And he was pinned there until they could get a crane to lift the thing off.
How long was he pinned there?
It was quite a long time because he suffered hypoxic damage to his brain.
Oh, my God. Did he live?
He lived, yeah. And he had crush injuries all over. I mean,
so he was just
every
messed
one of
up.
his ribs was crushed. He suffered a pneumothorax. He had hypoxic
brain damage,
injury. Yeah, right.
Oh, so he's just messed up.
He was messed up.
So did the steel mill say, yeah, we screwed up. We built this shitty ass wall and it fell on our dude?
No, they didn't. They denied any kind of liability. With
Always,
it, right?
man.
Right.
Always.
So we're going to trial, and on the day of trial, and this is going to be a big trial, we know it. So the jury pool, we had, in those days there was a big enough courtroom where they could support about 100 people in the pool.
Wow. Is this Wayne County or Detroit?
County. Okay. Wayne County. And I wish I could remember the name of the judge. I can't remember
was it
right now.
Kathleen McDonald?
I don't know for sure. But we had, so we're first day, we have the pool in there, Jeff's there. Jeff Danzig is, the associate who worked it up, and I'm there, and we're getting ready for jury selection, and we're kind of watching things, and the judge is doing the preliminary voir dire and says, anybody here that, this is the case. Anybody here think that they won't be able to serve? And this guy raises his hand. Of course, a lot of people raise their hand.
Yeah, right. Well, he's got a vacation or whatever, some
right.
bullshit, right?
So she goes, all right, all you people raising your hand, if you get called into the box, then you can tell me why you don't think you could do it, right? So we go through the entire morning, we're going through one person next, and so we're going to break for lunch. And she says, okay, we're going to break for lunch. We're going to come back afterwards, And this guy says, Judge, I really can't serve on this jury. And she goes, just to wait until after lunch. She goes, no, Judge, there's something I need to tell you. And so she's, gets a little bit irritated with him and says, all right, I'll tell you what, you're going to stay here. I'm going to put you under oath, and you're going to tell me why you can't, be a juror in this trial. So all the jurors leave, and we're sitting there, and, we're going like, okay, well, whatever. This guy just wants it out of the...
Yeah, wants off the pool, right?
Right. So he gets on the stand. She swears him in. And she goes, all right, now you tell me why you can't be, a jury in this trial. He goes, well, Judge, I was the safety, coordinator for the plant who did the original investigation on this accident, and they fired me after I submitted a report saying it was their fault.
Stop it!
I know.
Stop
it!
it!
You wouldn't believe it. It's
Dude,
I swear to God,
are
that
you
was the
making
truth.
this up?
No,
This
I
is the
swear
most-
it's the truth.
It has to be
What are the
divine
odds?
intervention.
What are the odds out of all the jury pool and all of Wayne County?
Hundreds of thousands of people.
And they hit this guy, and they hit his report, right?
So you're telling me that one of the jurors who got called to trial on this case
Yep.
was the guy who investigated this wall collapsing on your client,
Yep.
and he told the steel mill, this wall was unsafe, it's your fault.
Right.
That's the whole case.
And then they fired him.
And then they fired this guy
Yeah.
to hide it.
Right. We had no idea he existed.
This is like divine
Nothing.
intervention. This is the
I know.
law
It's
gods.
like only with
of
Jeff
like,
Feiger.
Oh
Only,
my God.
Right. Only that could have. And so, like, we're looking at each other like, what the, and we're going like, default,
Yeah,
man, default.
yeah.
And so, Jeff goes crazy on it, and they're denying any knowledge of it. Their attorneys are denying any knowledge of it.
Yeah,
and
right.
so the judge says, no, I'm not going to give you a default, but I'm going to do you one better. He's going to be your first witness. Right? So she did the right thing. And he was our first witness.
Was the guy, he was your first witness?
Yeah, he was our first witness.
Did the jury, was they like, yeah, that's the guy that just was in the jury?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
And so he testified that it was...
He testified that he did the initial investigation. It was his determination that, it was a poor design and that they were at fault. And that, his manager said, you need to change this report. He refused to change it. When he refused to change the report, they fired him.
Well, now tell me, I don't want to assume things, but I'm assuming you guys won.
We did win. But that wasn't the last thing that was weird in that case.
What?
Yeah, right. I know. So like at another point in the trial, we're our guy is on the stand, and we're a little bit worried about it because remember he has brain damage, but he doesn't have the kind of brain damage where it's apparent to people
who don't know him.
Who don't know it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's always the hardest to deal with
right.
clients is somebody gets brain damage and they look kind of normal.
Yeah.
But if you talk to all their loved ones who knew them beforehand, they're like, it's a totally different person.
Yeah. Right.
Right. But
right.
it's juries are skeptical and they have a natural tendency, I think, to think that plaintiffs' attorneys especially are making things up, or the injured person's making things up. But anyways, I digress. So
and they, he's not drooling at himself, so he must be okay or something like that. Yeah. Unless it's apparent. So we're worried because he's very impulsive, and he says things, almost like he had Tourette's in a certain way. Although I think his pre-morbid personality was a little bit on the sociopathic side, anyways. But anyway, so he gets on the stand and we go through it, direct, and that went pretty well. And then he gets on cross, and at a certain point, the attorney for the defendant say, "Well, can you ever, are you able to change the tire on your van?" He goes, "No, I can't do that." He goes, "Are you sure you can't change the tire on your van?"
Who was this defense attorney?
I'm not going to say.
All right. I feel like they should be called out for all these shenanigans. Yeah. But I understand. All right.
So anyways, and Jerry says, "No, I can't. It's too painful. I don't have the strength, And he goes, "Well, didn't you change the tire on your van 2 weeks ago?" And he goes, "No." And he goes, "Are you sure?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, we happen to have this video surveillance, right?"
Now, that's like every plaintiff's worst nightmare.
Right.
That's my worst nightmare. Is like I'm in the middle of trial and it's like I've told the jury about my case, my client, and then it's like, "Oh, well, look at this secret evidence that like you didn't know about and that, your client maybe didn't tell you about or whatever it is."
Right. And it's always out of context. So you could read into it, whatever, and they want you to read the negative things.
If you take anybody's Facebook profile, it's like all the best snapshots of their life, even though I know people who are complete miserable people. Yeah. And you look at their Facebook, you're like, "Oh my God," or their marriage is great. Yeah. And when inside, they're like, it's a disaster. Right. But anyway.
So here now we had talked, Jeff and I talked, I said, "Listen, this guy, his lifestyle, we need to make sure we have any video surveillance." And so, he made a motion. They had to produce any video. They said, "We have no video evidence whatsoever."
Yeah.
And they said in court, on the record, "We're not going to introduce any video evidence."
This is just like that trial we had with the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
We promise.
Right. Yeah.
There is none.
Right.
There will be one. Then in the middle of trial, look what we got.
Yeah. You know? So we see the video. So the judge, so we go crazy, right? It's like, "Oh, come on now. They're violating your order, Judge, but the jury already knows.
There's
they've
video.
Got something. So the jury's,
and sometimes it's worse what they imagine than what is in reality.
Exactly. So now, what are we going to do? So she dismisses the jury, and we're going to talk about we're arguing out. Well, Jerry leans over to me and he says, "That's not me." I says, "What do you mean?" He goes, "That's not me. That's my brother. That's in front of my brother's house. He changed the tire for me." I said, Are you lying to me?" He goes, "No, man, I swear to God, that's my brother." I says, "Well, let's call your brother right now." Right. And I'll talk to him first. And so I called up his brother and I said, "Hey, listen, have you changed the tire on your brother's van anytime?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, how long ago?" It's about 2 weeks ago. "About what time?" "Well, it's about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening." I said, "Can you be down here in court like right now?" Right. And so I go back and Jeff and I talk about it and we say, "Okay, what are we going to do?" And I says, "Well, let's show the video." Right. But so he cuts a deal with the judge and he says, "Okay, we're going to show the video to the jury, but you have to instruct the jury that they violated a court order producing that video." So, of course, she comes in and says, "Okay, that's what we're going to do." Right. Now, in the meanwhile...
Did the defense attorney still think it was your client?
Well, they were getting wind. When his brother showed up, they started getting a little nervous. And antsy,
yeah, they better get nervous.
Right. And so now our guy, Jerry... Again, he's impulsive and he's got brain damage, He's like, MF for this, MF for that, lying SOBs, like...
In front of the jury?
No, not in front of the jury, but in the courtroom, right? And I'm saying, "Jerry, go out in the hallway," right? Which was a mistake on my part because the videographer was in the hallway, right?
What video? Explain to listeners who aren't lawyers what a videographer is.
Videographers, that's the guy who actually took the video and is testifying that He took the video, and that's what the video
Like the
shows.
undercover private investigator guy.
Yeah, like the PI guy.
The
who
PI.
knows.
who
Yeah, I
went-
took this video. This is when I took it. That's what it shows. That's
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So the PI who took a video of your client's brother,
yeah.
but thought it was your client was out in the hall.
Right.
And you send your client
And,
out.
and of course, Jerry's like, and so I thought, oh, wait a minute. So I get out there, and of course, Jerry's like, oh, you lying SOB, I ought to kick your ass, that sort of stuff, right? And I'm going,
Yeah,
Jerry,
yeah.
Jerry, get over here. I said, listen, I'm telling you right now, all right? If you do that again, I'm going to kick your ass myself, right? And he goes, I'm sorry, man. I'll be okay. I'll be cool.
Yeah,
I'll be
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
I said,
yeah,
listen,
yeah.
when you go back in there, you look down at the table. I don't want you even to look up. Don't even look up. Look down at the table. Look sad. Don't say a word, right? He goes, okay, man, I'll do that. So we go back in, and they apparently figured it out. The defense figured it out. So they have the videographer on there, and the jury's in now. And judge says, well, I want the jury to know that we're going to show you the video, but, you need to understand this is in violation of a court order. They were ordered to produce all video evidence. They did not produce this in violation of my order, but the plaintiffs have agreed to show the video.
Good.
And so the defense attorney gets up and he goes, ladies and gentlemen, Judge, we don't need to show the video. We discovered we made a mistake, and then the videographer's on the stand, it's a young guy. And he says, well, do you have something to say to the jury? And he goes, yeah, I want to apologize to the jury. I made a mistake. I don't think that was, Mr. Such and such. And he goes, well, do you have anything to say to the judge? And he goes, yeah.
Who's saying this? Jeff?
The
or
defense attorney.
Okay.
The defense attorney's got the guy. And so the defense attorney goes, do you have anything to say to the judge too? And he goes, well, yeah, I want to apologize to the judge too. I didn't mean to cause any commotion, and the judge. So the judge now Jerry the whole time was like, he's looking down. And he's like, not reacting at all. And so the judge goes, do you have anything to say to Mr. Such and such, to Jerry? And he looks at Jerry and he says, I apologize. Man, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Jerry now, who had just 10 minutes earlier was like,
MF.
committing, threatening homicide, right? Looks up and he goes, that's okay, man. Everybody makes mistakes. And the jury, the women are crying on the jury. What a great guy. What a wonderful human being, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, that was just one of several things that went, weird
Gosh,
in
you
that
can't
trial.
make that stuff up. I mean, that's insane.
No.
That's like my cousin Vinny stuff.
Yeah. What are the odds, right, of all of the guy who we had no knowledge of him whatsoever, shows up in the
Dude,
jury
it has
pool.
to be like 1 in a million or even more. I mean,
Yeah,
even more.
right.
I mean, that they would get
Right.
called to jury duty, then they would get called in that particular
in that
case.
case and be in that pool.
It is insane. So tell us about, because I saw it on the news, we talked about it,
Yeah.
the dead person case who came back to life.
Yeah. So probably the craziest case I've ever worked on. Our client, or the client at the time, she was a young girl.
How young?
If I recall correctly, I would say she was like 12 maybe.
Oh my gosh.
Don't quote me. She was a kid. And she had special needs. And in the middle of the night, she had a breathing episode. And the mom called the 911, and they came, and they declared her dead and said she was
Wow.
dead. And several hours went by, and the funeral home came and picked her up. And like, this is the craziest thing of all time. The funeral home picked her up, and they're on their way back. And I talked to the funeral driver, the guy for the funeral home, and he said he was driving, and all of a sudden he heard
From where?
the back of the car.
In the hearse?
Yeah, where the body was.
Was the body in like a bag or what?
It was wrapped up in a sheet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So what happens?
So it's nuts. Okay, so I ended up requesting the video from the actual funeral home, because I'm like, is this on video? Like him getting her out? And I'll never forget, they get her out, okay, and
It's on video?
It's on video. It's like a stretcher, and they're literally like touching the top of the body, like, is this for real? And the guy like jumps back, and she was breathing, and they
moving?
moving. They call 911, and they're like, listen, we thought we picked up this body. The EMS said she was dead, and they rushed her to the hospital, and she lived for like a month after.
What the heck? What
The
is
nuttiest.
wrong with these people?
Yeah, can you believe that?
What? Didn't they check for a pulse or something before they declared her dead? I mean, isn't there things they need to do before they say somebody's dead? Like, I'm going to put in my will, like, leave me for a day
Make
before
sure
you
I'm,
put
like-
me in the ground
Yeah.
to make sure I'm freaking dead.
I think they call it like Lazarus syndrome. So we actually ended up going on Dr. Oz. He
No
featured
way.
this case on his show. Yeah, because it was like one of the nuttiest. I mean, I'll never. Can you imagine that as a family, like as a parent?
No.
Like they declare your child dead, and they take the body, and then you get a call that your
And you're
child.
crying
You're
and
crying,
stuff?
yeah. And you get a call like, "Oh, your child's at the hospital. They're
Alive.
alive."
This is
Like
crazy.
3-4 hours after
But
the fact.
how don't they know? I mean, don't they have to check for a pulse?
They said she didn't have one.
But how is that possible? This is crazy. You know, back in the day, I know this is weird,
Yeah.
but like people's worst fear was to be buried alive, right? And
When I was
now
a
look,
kid, it freaked me out.
yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't even want to say back in the day. I would say everybody's worst
Worst
one of
fear.
their worst fears.
Yeah.
You wake up and you're in a freaking coffin. But they used to have these things on people's coffins because I guess back in
Was
the
it
day,
yeah.
it was more common
Yeah.
because they didn't have all the medical technology
Yeah.
to test if somebody was dead.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't have the tools
Yeah.
to make sure that they were alive or dead. You would think nowadays they would have these tools. But anyways, so back in the day, I'm talking like over 100 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, this would happen a little more often. And they used to have these things in your coffin where if you woke up, there was like a button on your coffin and you'd pull a lever
It's like a bell.
and it would like ring a bell above your coffin that said, "Hey, I'm alive down here. Dig me up."
Yeah.
But my God, that's scary.
Isn't that
is
nuts?
scary.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know how that can happen, but this is how many people getting buried alive because this is the second Lazarus back from the dead case on Cases Gone Wild. And
Yeah.
we're on like episode 7 or something.
It's crazy.
So this is crazy.
yeah.
Well, that is surely a case gone wild.
You know, some of the cases I do, I work on any type of injury case, okay? So mostly auto cases, auto crash cases, explosion cases. Those are really difficult cases.
Those are
'cause
complicated cases.
complicated and people get hurt, okay?
And everybody blames everybody else in those.
Everybody blames everybody else, but you know what? We've got fire inspectors. They get in there and they figure it out. In this one case that I brought today, happened to be a gentleman. You know, he was a little slow on things, and he actually got to rent an efficiency apartment that was going to be torn down in the next several months. But
Well, why would you, dude, rent an apartment that's about to be torn down?
he needed a place to stay.
Okay.
Bottom line. He needed a place to stay. And the owner, we didn't know when it was going to be torn down. The owner, you know, was one of those guys that was trying to get a place built, and he wanted to squeeze out a few dollars in
Kind of
rent.
like a slumlord type
Well, I don't know.
situation.
I'm not going to call him a slumlord because he's a professional out there doing what he does. But in this particular situation, this was a pretty difficult efficiency, and it wasn't well kept up. Period.
So what happened?
So my guy rents this place out. He has his brother help him bring in the bed, bring in some furniture, so he can live there for several months until he finds a place to stay. All right. He has a girlfriend. His girlfriend is going to come over for the first night, and they're going to clean the place up and do whatever boyfriends and girlfriends do on their own time. Okay. And the defense said, well, they were smoking these big blunts, you know, and they were, you know, doing all this, you know, stuff. But the reality was he set the mood. He got the candles ready. He had the bed ready. The girlfriend was there. They were going to have a good time. And at the end of the day, they were having a good time until there was an explosion. Okay. They both.
Now, what kind of explosion?
It was a gas explosion.
Okay.
Okay.
Not like a sex explosion
No.
or so. Okay.
No. Not. They think. I don't know if they got there yet. Okay.
Okay.
But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, they were there. They were having a good time. And what happened was there was a gas valve in the room, and the gas valve should have been capped by the landlord.
So
okay?
when you say a gas, we're talking about like natural gas from like DTE Energy or whatever? or-
Natural gas valve, okay, where the landlord had removed some type of heating unit for that particular efficiency room.
Like a
okay?
heater or something?
Correct. It was a gas heater. So it wasn't like at one time they had a furnace in there. It was they had these units in each unit that regulated the gas, okay, like a heating unit. And they had removed that heating unit. Well, instead of capping that unit, they left the cap off of the gas valve. Now,
So just so we understand, so there's like a gas pipe that comes into this heater. The landlord removes the heater and then doesn't seal the pipe up.
correct, doesn't seal it like you can put a gas cap on it and tighten it up, and it's there forever.
Like a top to a pop bottle or
yeah,
something.
top to a pop bottle, whatever. Right, exactly, top to a pop bottle. And unfortunately, they didn't put the cap on there. So what happened was there still is this lever for the gas to be turned on and off. And what happened was, as they were having sex on the bed was moving.
Oh,
and it
stop.
yes, this is what happened. The bed was moving. This is in the actual fire investigation report. Okay, the bed was moving.
So they're getting it on.
They're
the
getting
bed's
it on.
going back and
Bed's
forth.
back and forth, okay? And the gas valve now is open, and there's no cap on the gas valve.
So it's shooting out.
Gas is going out. The candles are in the room. The mood is set, and boom! Boom.
No, wait, wow. Are they naked in
Yes,
bed?
naked in bed. Boom.
Oh my
It
God. What a way
explodes.
to go.
Right.
This, who would think?
It explodes.
They're making some friction. You don't think it's going to light off the real explosion. Now that's going out with a bang.
That is explosive sex, okay? And it goes, and they both are on fire, running down the street naked.
No
okay?
way.
Yes, because they're naked, okay?
And they're on fire?
And they're on fire. And they're running out the door because the place is engulfed in fire because it's an explosion. And they're out. And
the gas was probably all over them.
gas was all. So it was all over them, but they were on fire from it. Okay.
Yeah.
So they had to get out of that area. Okay. And one of the defenses was, why didn't you smell the gas while it was going? And unfortunately for my client, earlier in his life, he was in a horrible car accident and lost his sense of smell.
No way.
Yes. So their defense was defenseless because he didn't have the sense of smell. You have to take your victim as you find him, you know?
Right.
And so there we go. He was burned. His girlfriend was burned. They were on fire. And this is one of the cases that I brought today. And one of the defenses was, look, they were all high. They were doing all these things. My guy had a marijuana card. So, okay, he didn't uncap the gas valve. And then one of the photos that we had to take because to show his burns, showed his burns. Unfortunately, on his back, in big tattoo letters said "Smokey."
Okay. All right. Now, did he? Okay. This is wild. So, Lloyd, we're going to show our viewers, for those of us on YouTube, we're going to show the picture. This is the guy right here.
Correct.
All right. So, for our listeners who are not on YouTube, he's a goofy looking guy.
He's a great guy. He's such a nice guy. He really was he was really a nice guy. Okay.
Okay. All right. Now, on his back is he has a hairy back like me, by the way. This back is this. I hope nobody photoshopped my back on here because this looks exactly like my back. But he has a tattoo on his back that says Smokey in kind of the old English D script that we use for our Detroit letter. And then there's like a crab on fire.
It's on fire.
Did he get this tattoo to remember the explosion, or did he have this before the explosion?
He had it before.
Okay, that is one hell of a coincidence.
It is a coincidence.
So what happened?
Well, listen, we filed the lawsuit and we went after the landlord who defended it as they normally defend these cases, wanted to blame everybody else but themselves.
They always do that.
You know, I must have had the cap on there. And we dug deeper and we dug deeper. We knew that in this particular set of efficiencies, there were other tenants that had some challenges with gas. The smell of gas were moved around. So this was an ongoing problem in this particular area. But my guy didn't know. My guy just was happy to have a place to stay. He had his bed, had his girlfriend, was having sex, and boom.